Thank you for downloading this Brum Radio podcast. For more podcasts, visit brumradio.com.
And now, for your listening pleasure, it's the Brum Picture Show, brought to you by Brum Radio.
Hello and welcome to the Brum Picture Show, right here on Brum Radio. It's a weekly film show covering local, independent and world cinema, brought to you by Birmingham-based community cinema collective Screen B14. Don't you know what I mean?
You didn't warn me he was going to burst into song, people. It's like being in a musical.
So, welcome to the Brum Picture Show on Brum Radio. As you may have guessed from my angelically melodic introduction, the topic this week will be musicals. Now, it's the middle of January, it's cold, it's dark, everyone's miserable, the future is uncertain but bleak, so why not let's try to cheer ourselves up with a little bit of a sing-song, eh? Songs are great, films are great, so together, they're doubly great. So, let's get through this month, shall we? Now, once again, it's a little bit quieter in the studio than usual today, because, again, Rory has abandoned us. Now, don't worry, he claims that he's not off networking again. As regular listeners may remember, we chastised him for doing that a few episodes ago, but he is in fact working, which is even worse if you ask me. I know. He has told us, however, at some point he will be here, so that's a nice little bit of suspense for you throughout this episode for you to enjoy. Will he turn up? If he does, what will he have to say for himself? So forget waiting for Godot, this is waiting for Rory. But thankfully, we have our ever-loyal film expert, film lover, film hater, filmmaker, the great Nadine O'Mahony.
Do I have to sing?
Yes.
No, that's not going to happen. Yes, I'm Nadine. I'm the head programmer for Screen B14. I write films, I direct them. I don't sing or dance, I'm afraid, but I do co-present the show with Rory and Paul.
Oh yeah, that's my name. My name's Paul. Hi.
Yeah.
Hi everyone. So Nadine, I believe that you have just come back from somewhere that's even colder than Birmingham.
Yes, I've just flown back from Prague. It was freezing. It was -11. I learnt the fine art of layering, and I also got a chance to visit some movie locations.
Ooh!
If you're a fan of the Mission Impossible franchise, as I am, you'll know that they filmed many scenes in Prague in the first film on the Charles Bridge and around that area. So I could see the ghost of Ethan Hawke running down the streets. I posed next to the gate where Kristen Scott Thomas had a run-in with a Frenchman. Unfortunate run-in. So yes, that was quite fun. I enjoyed that.
Oh, that sounds great. That sounds like well, I mean, actually, at -11, that sounds unacceptable. Even if you are visiting some movie sets, I'd still probably rather just not go.
Yeah. Well, they know how to do it over there. We bought some really thick scarves and gloves and just layered ourselves up and braved it. And you know what? It wasn't too bad. Just lots of hot chocolate. Lots of hot chocolate as well.
Okay. Well, that sounds nice. Well, very pleasant indeed. Well, welcome back, Nadine, to Birmingham. I'm sure you're thrilled to be here after flying back from Prague. And oh my goodness, I bet your arms are tired.
Ooh.
Anyway, so coming up later in the show today, we will, as aforementioned, be discussing musicals at length. We'll be choosing our favourite musical to talk about, or, well, maybe not our favourite, maybe just one that we think we should tell you guys about. And of course, we will also have Nadine's roundup of news and events. And we will also have a review of Society of the Snow, amongst other things. But now it's time to take a look at... Oh my goodness! Look, Who's just walked into the studio? Well, we just did this whole introduction about how the whole episode was going to be us full of suspense of when Rory's going to turn up, what he's going to have to say for himself. I made a whole waiting for Rory joke, and now you've just anticlimactically turned up
slightly late.
Slightly late, 5 minutes in. It was almost not worth putting any of that in my introduction at all.
I wasted your entire evening last
You
night
did.
about all the sledging you were going to give me.
Do you know how long it took me to script that 2 sentences about you?
I know you're a perfectionist, so I can imagine it could take some time.
Well, hi.
Hello.
Rory. Welcome back.
Well, thanks for that warm welcome.
Yeah.
It's lovely to be back on the Brum Picture Show in the new year.
Ooh, yeah, we've just been talking about how it is January time and we've decided to cheer ourselves up from this cold, miserable month with a lovely little chat about musicals.
There we go.
So-
The biggest cure for seasonal affective disorder, I think.
Exactly,
Well,
exactly.
I think the biggest cure for seasonal affective disorder was Paul's introduction. You missed it. He sang the introduction
Yeah.
without warning to me at all. And
There should be a trigger warning for that.
no, but honestly, this is a bit of news for the viewers. Paul did his first ever karaoke on New Year's Day, and it took about an hour of me cajoling him to do it, and he brought the house down. Paul actually does have an amazing singing voice.
I'm so glad we've taken our precious time in the studio to talk about this.
I know, thanks, Nadine.
And the annoying thing
I
is,
think it's important.
the annoying thing is, he said, "Oh no, I can't do karaoke. There's no way. It'd be too embarrassing." And then proceeded a round of applause after he finished.
We can't stop
dear.
him now. We can't stop him now. The
that's-
genie's out the bottle.
He's too humble. He's
Too humble,
Too
yes.
humble to comment.
I'm incredibly embarrassed right now. But anyway, welcome Rory, welcome Nadine. Let's move on with this show and let's talk about some of the news items that have caught our eye recently. So Nadine, I believe you had a couple of things that you wanted to mention.
Yes, you may remember Paul breaking the very exciting news just some weeks ago of Oscar Isaacs carrying a Christmas tree.
Ah, that's it, yeah.
Yep, and we also tweeted that picture to our socials at ScreenB14 for those who had not seen it. Wow. I think he's been one-upped by his co-star Ethan Hawke from Moon Knight, who was also pictured carrying a Christmas tree in a very jaunty manner.
Jaunty, was it?
It was so jaunty. I think it was on one leg.
Wow.
He was just balancing it on one leg. He was smiling, that Hollywood smile of his.
He was balancing an entire Christmas tree on his leg.
No, he was balanced on his leg and the Christmas tree was balanced on his shoulder.
Sorry, Oscar Isaac was balanced on Ethan Hawke's
No,
leg.
Ethan Hawke was on one leg and Christmas tree was balanced on his shoulder.
Right, okay.
Was it a full-size Christmas tree?
Oh yeah, it was a
or-
proper Christmas tree. And I can't help but think this is in direct sort of conversation with Oscar Isaacs. Do you know what I mean? I feel like he saw the picture. He tuned into the show and heard about it and felt, I've got to top this.
Oh.
And I think he did. So I think I will be posting both Christmas tree pictures to our social medias at ScreenB14, and I'll let you listeners decide who did it better.
Who, Nadine, this is a question for you. What next celebrity would you like to see carry a Christmas tree?
Oh gosh, so many. I'd like to see a woman carry a Christmas tree. Let's
For
get
equality.
Some women,
Just
yeah.
a woman,
Just
any
just
woman.
any woman.
'Cause women can carry Christmas trees too.
Yeah.
And I haven't seen it yet.
Exactly, I've not seen this.
I think Kate Blanchett would really. She'd do it some justice.
I'd like to see sort of Timothy Chalamet wrestle with a Christmas tree.
I think Timothy Chalamet might need some help.
What,
The
in
only-
general?
just carrying the Christmas tree. Might
Oh,
be
right,
too
yeah.
much.
He's a very slight chap, isn't he?
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Or maybe just like a smaller, maybe some other kind of plant. January themed.
Well, I'm glad that this is a trend that's emerging. I'm hoping to see more celebrities carrying more plants.
Yeah.
So that's good. Rory, anything catch your eye?
Yeah, so I saw in The Guardian, they had an article, it was about the BFI because they've started a season celebrating the work of British composer John Barry. He composed some James Bond films, including License to Kill. Sorry, I just saw the article's called License to Offend. But I don't know if he did actually compose License to Kill.
Well, he did the main theme, so
Is that him?
There definitely would be some John Barry music in License.
Does he
to
just
Kill.
do? Is that his? Is
It's
he
like the din din
Oh,
din
the
din
surf
din
rock.
din 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 din. That's John Barry, definitely.
Is it?
So he definitely scored like the earlier ones. I don't know whether he was still like scoring the whole films by the time Dalton got involved, but
Yeah.
It'd been based on his original
exactly.
work.
Well, what was interesting about it is the BFI, they've started putting a trigger warning for these films. This was one of the trigger warnings, one of the disclaimers. It says contains language, images, or other content that reflects views prevalent in its time, but will cause offence today. And then in brackets, as they did then. Now,
It's quite vague.
it is vague, and also it's not entirely true in that it's not that it will cause offence today. It might cause offence today, depending on who's watching it.
Yeah, is that the exact wording then?
Yeah,
Really? Okay.
Because if you're if you're racist, it might not cause you offence, but then also you would argue you probably aren't going to a BFI, screening of the composer John Barry. So
Oh, well, you don't know.
this is the BFI's response. Whilst we have a responsibility to preserve films as close to their contemporaneous accuracy as possible, even where they contain language or depiction which we categorically reject, we also have a responsibility in how we preserve them to our audiences. Yeah.
So, well, I agree with that because I think there's been a bit of a trend recently of actually actively censoring older films, and I don't agree with that at all. Like just cutting bits out. It's like these are documents of a historic period, and if you start snipping little bits out based on the current ideas of what is socially acceptable, then you're just rewriting history, aren't you? So we need to know where we came from, and we need to know that this is how things were, and then we can learn from our past mistakes and build on that. So I'd much rather they just put up a little warning going, some of this a little bit dodgy, mate, than start cutting stuff out. So
Yeah,
good on them for that.
You get warned if there's violence and things like that. So, and I don't have a problem with that. So,
Exactly.
do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
You don't need the warning.
I don't. I'm like, oh, great. When I see that,
Yeah.
strong bloody violence.
You get excited
Fantastic.
by that.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I'll watch that. But I think it's worth it. I'm a mixed race person, and I tuned into a lovely holiday musical not long ago, Holiday Inn, and wasn't expecting to see a huge song and dance number with blackface in it. I would say it did offend me, but I continued to watch the film. But I can see why. I think it's worth letting people know that that's in the film if you're not expecting it, so at least you know what you're getting yourself in for. So yeah, I don't have a huge problem with that. I think, like you say, it's better than actively editing these bits out to make them more palatable.
Yeah. Bring back smoking in Tom and Jerry cartoons, I say.
Okay.
Just quickly, little news article that I found that I mainly just enjoyed the phrasing of the headline. Barry Keoghan admits Saltburn's salacious grave scene was improvised, and I just how loaded is that? Just saying, it's like, oh, he took responsibility for that. Now, if you haven't seen Saltburn, there's a scene.
I watched it at Christmas.
lovely.
Really? On
With
Christmas
your
Day?
parents?
Yeah, with my parents, got the whole family around.
Wonderful.
Well, there's a scene that.
Now that needs a warning.
Yeah, there's a scene involving a grave that you definitely would not want to watch with your parents on Christmas Day, and apparently Barry Keoghan has said that wasn't scripted. He just wanted to see what Oliver would do next. I wanted to see what the next level of obsession was, and by that I mean I just wanted the camera to roll, not to kind of preempt it or rehearse it. And what happened. It was one take, and I think it was right. It moved the story forward. Did it, Barry? And I'm sure it wasn't that. I bet there's no way.
I bet there was somewhere in the script.
He didn't say to Emerald Fennell, it was like, by the way, I'm going to do this. It's like the cameras are rolling, and then suddenly he starts doing that.
You'd give a heads up to the production.
You would,
Like
or
the poor runners.
Yeah, or what?
No, it was a closed set, I believe. It was a closed set.
Or is it true that just everyone on the set just stood there aghast, just like, what's Barry doing? He's gone mad. And Emerald Fennell's just like, no, just let it roll. He's an artist. Let's see where he goes with this. And then then we wind up with that. But anyway, that just amused me.
That was the scene that made an audience member say the S word when you were watching it.
Yes,
isn't it,
yeah.
So it's a very shocking scene.
So I hope he doesn't do that in every film he does.
That's just going to be his thing now.
I just want to see where this character's going.
So yeah, I just thought that was an interesting one. Because say what you will about Saltburn, the amount of discourse that it is still generating, you can't say it's an unsuccessful film. It's just everyone's still talking about it. Yeah, it's some shocking stuff if you've never seen films before. But anyway, also Talk to Me directors Danny and Michael Philippou will begin filming their next project this year. So obviously I'm excited to do that. They're doing a sequel to Talk to Me and also a Street Fighter film. Classic. Get the indie directors to do some massive bit of IP and then also a sequel to their own film. You are listening to the Brum Picture Show on Brum Radio. We are going to be talking about musicals to try and cheer ourselves up. So, do we like musicals? Is the question.
Is it the question?
Is it the question? Well,
we're going to do a show completely about musicals and we're all going to answer no, we don't like musicals.
Quite possibly. Well, 'cause my thing is that I've never really considered myself much of a musical guy. But having said that...
You make music.
Having said that, I like music, but I don't tend to seek out musicals. But regular listeners to the show will know that I routinely say that The Muppet Christmas Carol is the greatest film of all time.
Exactly.
And that is literally a musical.
So you're just chatting nonsense, aren't you?
I'm just a contradictory figure, and actually musicals are great. But yeah, so Nadine, would you like to talk at length about the history of musicals and their place within cinematic history and public consciousness and the universe overall?
No.
Cool.
I'll give you a little bit of information. So obviously the first films that came out weren't musicals because they were silent films. So really the musical could only come about when sound was introduced to cinema, but it sort of drew on a much older tradition of musical theatre. Rory's partner is a big musical theatre person, isn't she?
Yep, shout out to Lauren Shirley.
Yeah, so a lot of the sort of musicals, obviously they drew on a much older tradition, sort of like the vaudeville, American tradition and music hall tradition from the United Kingdom. And the first talkie film was a musical, was The Jazz Singer, was a film that probably needed a trigger warning. Again, some very unfortunate sort of racial stereotyping in that. Al Johnson sang songs such as My Mammy, and he was a white man and probably shouldn't have been doing that. But, you know, after that, we had some amazing films. We have, you know, The Wizard of Oz is a musical, you know, Singing in the Rain, some of these, you know, some of the biggest, most classic iconic film moments of all time come from musicals. And you know, musicals were big business back in the day. They got bums on seats in movie theatres, along with, you know, the big epic films that also fell out of fashion later on. And musicals were out of fashion for quite some time. But then we had, you know, subversive musicals in the 70s and 80s, things like the Rocky Horror Picture Show, films like
The Little Shop of Horrors.
Exactly. So, you know, not your grandmother's musical. And now we've got Disney films, we've got the Muppets, we've got all sorts going on. So, yeah, it really has evolved from the earliest days of talking cinema right up to, I mean, this year, I think we're getting a bit of a musical comeback. This year alone, The Little Mermaid, Wonka, The Colour Purple. Next year, we're going to have a musical version of Mean Girls coming out. One thing that I find interesting, actually, though, I think people are still there's a bit of trepidation about musicals. Films like Wonka and Mean Girls, the advertising is leaning away from the musical aspect, as if they're trying to trick people to come into the cinema and then like surprise them with a musical number. But, you know, La La Land was a huge hit. You know, I think the musical is making a comeback for sure.
Generally speaking, though, why did that decline happen, do you think? Because, like, for example, my girlfriend's really into musicals and it's come from her granddad, who all he watches is musicals. It's like, and that's because he's of that generation where, you know, that was the big event. The musical was the big event. Like you said, that's what got people out into the cinemas. But when did that decline exactly? And why did it decline?
In the 60s, they were still very big. You had a lot of, like Dr. Dolittle and Paint Your Wagon and all those kind of films. But I think in the 70s, just generally, there was a kind of trend towards gritty realism in cinema. And that probably didn't fit as well with the classic, big Hollywood musical, traditional type. But like I said, then you had musicals by like the Rocky Horror Picture Show. You had Bob Fosse, who I'll be mentioning later, who worked in Broadway musical theatre as well, and he had some very sort of edgy musicals such as Cabaret and all that jazz, and sort of dealing with slightly darker themes. So I think
was it a history thing in some ways? Because I know obviously in the 50s and 60s there was still, it was still sort of on the back end of the Second World War, and then only after that, revisionism came in within the arts, and was that the what motivated?
You think sort of dark times almost led to a boom in musicals of like people wanting to be
escapism and that
cheered
sort
up,
of thing.
and maybe in a post-pandemic world, we all need a little bit of sunshine and tap dancing.
Nice. I mean, I think I do like musicals, but I think my problem with a lot of them is that just the arrangements of the music, the songs themselves are just so traditional that I wish there were more musicals with just my kind of music, to be honest. It's why I love Annette so much, because it's kind of basically a rock opera, and it has like, some rock music in it, as long as well as many other genres. But I don't know, it's just I just want like Suspiria the musical, like with the Tom York soundtrack. Like I wish there was more kind of stuff that wasn't just so traditional all the time, because I think that is just the general format for musicals. Is you've got your orchestral arrangements and you got all this business.
Sort of Broadway. I think a lot of that is stemming from that theatre roots, the theatre roots of the musical. And I think you're probably right, to survive, to sort of become relevant, perhaps musicals need to shed those theatrical sort of elements and that Broadway, because there is something in that style of singing. It's so specific, and maybe we do need to see more rock, hip hop, whatever other genres, trip hop musicals. I don't know, something different.
It's sort of evolved, but in probably not the way you want, because I know Lin-Manuel Miranda, he's done stuff different with Into the Heights, and obviously Hamilton. That's on the West, but that's not. I mean, it's hip hop, but it's probably not quite. What you're looking for, really.
Yeah, it's not gritty, is it? It's still sort of
No, exactly.
playing to the middle class audience. But I think that's the thing as well, because theatre, when you think about it, theatre tickets are so expensive, and they are catering to an older audience who probably, are not as edgy, perhaps, and sort of interested in what's sort of new and exciting. But as we age, we'll start to see things that like, oh, we actually like that, because that reminds us of when we were young.
Yeah, maybe they'll finally make the Green Day American Idiot film, because I know they did the stage version, but they were talking about doing a film of that for a while, and that never happened. But I guess the thing is, I perhaps that's why we're seeing an increase in more event cinema and like live streaming, ballets and musical theatre and that kind of stuff, is because it's still a massive, like of all genres of film, making a musical is probably one of the biggest financial risks, just because of the money involved in making a musical, with all the the dance troupes and the choreography, just everything that goes into it. Like it's a much bigger production, so it's no.
But then you've got films like Once. That was a musical, wasn't it?
Ah, right.
And that was a low budget.
Or was it a film with songs in it?
I don't know.
But I think it became a show. It did become a show.
Oh, right, there you go.
Well, that's something actually we haven't addressed, is what is a musical? Is a musical just a film with songs in it?
Well, I think there's definitely, because would you call, I'm not sure.
Bohemian Rhapsody a musical?
I don't know.
A music biopic.
Yeah.
But then we were also talking about dancicles as well. I don't even know if that's the correct term, but there are some films that have big dance sequences, but not the singing numbers. So
Yeah.
think like Step Up to the Streets and stuff like that. So what's that even called?
Or Get a Gaspar Noé's Climax, which I absolutely
Yeah.
love. There's a lot of dancing in that, but I certainly wouldn't call it a musical.
Exactly.
So-
Maybe it should be a musical.
Yeah. Well, if you know what a musical is, email us at pictureshow@brumradio.com.
The other thing is as well, it seems like when you look at most of the new musicals that become popular, they're all either like sort of versions of previously or in musicals like West Side Story, you know, or even the new ones, they're all trying to bring us back to another time in the past. Like La La Land is about, you know, it's about Hollywood, you know, in the golden era or whatever.
So there's a nostalgic element to it, a bit retro.
But there's Into the Heights. I mean, I'm sure there are other examples, but musicals that are written now in today's time that have done really, really well.
I mean, you could say that about most films, though, to be honest. Like,
yeah.
even most films, it's just like it's got to be based on some kind of existing IP or something. It's got to be something people remember. But no, you're right. Like, it's just, there's not that much, you know. People just like old things and they just want to see the old things again. That's the safe bet financially.
It seems like a good way of recycling things as well. Like, oh, you've seen Mean Girls and you like that. Now Mean Girls the musical. Or you read Colour Purple and you watched the original Colour Purple. Well, now it's the Colour Purple the musical. So
You like Schindler's List. Now
Oh, no.
Schindler's List the musical.
perhaps not. Perhaps that's going a little too far.
All right, maybe.
Could you make anything a musical though?
Oh, yeah.
Wow, yeah.
That's the question.
I mean, Cabaret,
Yeah.
that's a musical.
Yeah.
And that deals with some, you know,
Well, yeah.
dark themes. And even The Sound of Music, one of the biggest musicals. I mean, that's dealing
Exactly.
with a very dark period of history.
full of Nazis. So,
Exactly.
you know,
The
there you go.
Producers. I mean, the film The Producers is all about that, isn't
Mm-hmm.
it? It's about turning something that should never be a musical
Yeah.
into a musical.
I love that
Exactly.
musical.
But anyway, we should definitely be moving on. So we will each be, as usual, talking about a film of our choice. So Nadine, what is your choice for this week?
So my musical choice today is Chicago. And I think if you're a person who says that you don't like musicals, then, you know, I challenge you to watch Chicago and then say that afterwards. Because I think it is one of... On the one hand, it is a traditional Broadway musical. It's a huge success, has toured all around the world. You'll probably, even if you haven't seen the film, you'll probably be able to hum along to some of the tunes. But it is edgy, it is grittier. It is, you know, Bob Fosse, his work particularly was quite dark. And he did like to deal with sort of challenging subject matter. And this is about, you know, Murderess Row in Chicago in the 1930s jazz age. It's all about booze and liquor and murder. And, you know, what isn't fun about that? So this is based on the Bob Fosse, you know, original musical that he sort of planned with his former wife, Gwen Verdon. If you haven't seen it, I hugely recommend the TV show Fosse Verdon that deals with their relationship and sort of many of the projects that they worked on together. It's fantastic. And they wanted the rights to a play that had been based on a real life story of two women in Chicago who had murdered their partners, Beulah Annan and Belva Gardner, and who got away with it. And the reporter who had reported on the cases, you know, saw that these women were being treated differently because of the way they looked. They were very photogenic, even though they were obviously guilty. Their stories didn't quite add up, but, you know, an all-male jury let them off. And I think she felt quite bad about it, especially as, you know, a woman who wasn't as photogenic had been sentenced, you know, to death. She was given a retrial and she was let off. But, yes, so she wrote a play about it. And for years, Fosse and Verdon wanted to make a musical out of it, and she didn't want to. I guess she thought it would glamorise that story, but then she passed away and then they got the rights to it. And now we have Chicago, and boy, is it a fun romp. But it does have something serious to say, and I think it does talk about, you know, the media and how we sort of glamorise criminals and how we sort of, you know, view women, and it's a very musical. It is like jam-packed with songs. I mean, there's more songs than just normal talking in it. Some great dance numbers. I think the for years they wanted to make a musical out of it, a movie musical, and I think Madonna was attached at one point. We had Catherine Zeta-Jones, who won an Oscar for her role in it, and Renee Zellweger in the leading parts. And, it is one of those, you've got to sing along to it. I defy you to sort of watch this and not sort of tap your feet and nod your head and sort of dance around the living room a little bit. Perhaps like Barry Keoghan at the end of Saltburn.
But maybe don't do that in the cinema.
Yeah, definitely. But no, I think I really recommend it. If you're a person who thinks they don't like musicals, watch Chicago and hopefully you'll change your mind.
Is it better than The Muppets?
Yes.
Oh.
Do the Muppets...
I don't think that's possible, so I reject your entire review now.
Okay.
My girlfriend, obviously Lauren, she's performed in Chicago before, was on the show, and it sounds like performing Chicago for a girl in sort of her 20s, is the best thing to do. It's the most fun because all the female characters are amazing to play. They're all really sassy. Yeah. Exactly.
I mean, it's a lot of fun and very specific sort of dance moves as well. I mean, I think Fosse probably invented jazz hands, basically. He had very specific, it was all about even just like the turn of your head or your eyes it was very, very specific, tiny, detailed sort of movements, but very tricky sort of dance moves. Not the easiest to pull off, but lots of fun to watch.
Lovely. Well, I'll be sure. I'll be honest. I've not seen it, and I will be sure to check it out now because I love, crime and stuff.
I thought you were going to say crying.
I love crying.
I love criminal women.
Will it make me cry?
It might actually. There are some poignant moments.
Okay.
There's definitely one or two poignant moments.
I don't think it will.
Oh, really?
I think, well, maybe
There's
not.
a twinkle in Rory's eye that makes me think I'm going to have an entirely different reaction.
We definitely need to watch it. I think it'd be fun.
Oh, lovely.
And then do karaoke of it afterwards.
You're listening to the Brum Picture Show on Brum Radio, and today we are trying to cheer ourselves up in this cold, cold January by talking about musicals. Now, I was going to talk about Annette, which is the Sparks Brothers film featuring music from Sparks and directed by Leos Carax, who I'll admit the only other film I've seen of him is Holy Motors, but I absolutely love that. But anyway, it's hilarious and dark, and it's about a pretentious stand-up played by Adam Driver and a soprano singer played by Marion Cotillard, and they are parents to a wooden puppet called Annette. And then it goes from there. The story progresses as you'd imagine. It's a truly bonkers film, and if you haven't seen it, do check it out. But then I saw something else, and I thought, oh no, I'm going to talk about that instead. And I thought it would tie in nicely with our review of Society of the Snow, which we'll be discussing later. So I'm going to talk about Cannibal, the musical. That's right, we lured you in with musicals, but this episode is actually going to be a stealth cannibalism special.
What? I didn't sign up for that.
I fooled you all. But yeah, no, I just came across this on Shudder the other day because I got a Shudder trial, so I've been watching a lot of trash, frankly, and this popped up, and I'll be honest, I didn't know it existed. So this is directed, written, produced, co-scored by and starring Trey Parker, obviously later of South Park and Book of Mormon fame, and it was made while he was still at university, and it was later released by Troma. So if you know your low-budget horror, they're a distribution company who specialise in ultra-low-budget exploitation films with films like Chopper Chicks in Zombie Town, which, fun fact, is one of Billy Bob Thornton's early performances. But yeah, it was made while he was at uni and just made at weekends and during spring break. So this is essentially a student film, but it's a very charming one and a very interesting little origin story for where Trey Parker would go. So it stars Trey Parker, who's credited as Juan Schwartz, as Alfred Packer, who was a real-life character from the Old Western times. So it's a really interesting story, which you should look into, because this happened, guys. He was a prospector who became the sole survivor of a 6-man trek across the San Juan Mountains in Colorado, and he appeared without the rest of his party, and everyone was like, What happened to those other people?
This isn't the Donna party, was it?
Different story.
A different one.
There was a lot of cannibalism
Oh my
stories in the Old
goodness.
West times. But yeah, so the rest of his party was later found partially eaten, and he was sentenced to death. And this triggered a decades-long legal battle. Basically, it's a true story, and I will say, it's certainly not for everyone. You know, it's crude, and of course it is coming from Trey Parker of South Park fame. And it starts with one of the goriest opening sequences you'll see, and very well done for a student film. And it goes from there. And there's some really, truly disgusting stuff here. But there's also a lot of really highbrow stuff in there, because let's face it, like, Trey Parker is a very well-educated man, and he's obviously, his musical theatre background is quite apparent. Like, he knows how to write a song, like Book of Mormon, and even, you know, Team America and the South Park film. Like, he's obviously well versed in his musical theatre, and it shows. And there's actually some really good choreography in there, and some quite impressive dance sequences for what is essentially a student film. And I don't know, I just enjoyed it very much. There's an incredible love song about a horse, and I'd say that is up there with My Lovely Horse from Father Ted. And going back to our Christmas episode, there's a whole song about building a snowman, Nadine.
Aww.
And I'm sure you'd like that.
I'd enjoy that.
And yeah, so there's also some lovely, like, David Zucker-esque visual gags, and, you know, airplane and all that kind of stuff. The horse, that there is a love song about 15 different horses play this horse, and they're all entirely different. And it's very noticeable from scene to scene that it is just different. I think that's partly budget constraints. It's just like, the same horse not available. It's a busy horse. It's got scheduling conflicts. It can't just be
Got
working
a few races.
It can't be
Yeah.
working around a student's schedule. But in a way, it just turns into a nice visual gag in itself. But there's also lots of little references to Monty Python, like nice little meta jokes, and just some great lines. There's definitely a lot of stuff that is very 1993 and would not go down very well today.
Oh, do we need
But,
another
like,
trigger
what-
warning?
Well, there is, because
What
there's-
would the trigger warning be?
well, you know, the usual racism, homophobia, misogyny, all that kind of stuff. But it's within the context of, you know, satire, so it's kind of
Okay.
okay. But there is this whole sequence that I'm not entirely sure what it's about, really. So they come across a tribe of Native Americans, but these Native Americans are all Japanese for some reason. But there's no...
Maybe it's a comment on sort of early films that did portray Native Americans with non-native actors.
Maybe.
Potentially.
Exactly. So yes, satire. So it's absolutely
yeah.
fine. It's
Maybe
not,
it's just
We
gone
don't want to
over your head.
cancel Trey Parker, do we?
Well, I think he's
I mean, I
constantly-
think he's
he's on the
uncancelable.
cusp.
Uncancelable.
you cannot cancel Trey Parker. Like, that's just what he does, is that kind of thing. But anyway, I just really enjoyed it, and it is rough around the edges. It is, you know, some might even call it a bad film, but it's one that I enjoyed very much. And there's this wonderful little speech near the end, and that just made me think, well, that's just spot on. You know, this is my kind of film. And that speech was, probably the most important thing is that when things get really bad and the world looks its darkest, you just have to throw up your hands and say, well, all right, because it's probably going to get a heck of a lot worse. There you go.
Fair
Another
enough.
cheery note.
Yeah.
Another cheery note. But just in general...
Let's cheer everybody up with a musical special
Yeah,
episode.
exactly. Well, to be fair, I would like to see more, you know, cannibal-based musicals. Like, imagine Hannibal! ! I ate his liver with some fava beans and a nice Chianti. That'd be great, yeah?
Yeah, I'd love that. Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I want you to write it.
To be honest,
I'll get on it.
I spent my Christmas rewatching The Terror, and that has a quite a deal of cannibalism in it as well. So maybe
Right.
it's quite a seasonable. Maybe we can make Christmas cannibalism a thing.
There we go. That's nice, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, anyway, I think we need a palate cleanser after that. And I do believe, Rory, you're going to talk about something that's a bit nicer.
Yeah,
So-
West Side. Have you seen West Side Story?
No. Is it not nicer?
Have you seen Romeo and Juliet?
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of that,
Oh.
but with
modern.
music.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Okay. Well, I mean, that's not very happy either, is it?
No.
All right. Carry on.
Well, it's funny. It's funny I mentioned that this was so my and I might even say love of musicals, but it's becoming that. It stemmed from, as I said, I mentioned my girlfriend who's really, really into musicals, and it almost to the point where it felt like I had to really get on board with this. Otherwise, the relationship might be in jeopardy.
It's a deal breaker.
Yeah. It's a deal breaker, and I did do so. And I've got, like I've mentioned before, I've got a scratch thing, like 100 best musicals. I scratched them off, so that's part of it as well. That keeps me entertained. But West Side Story is one of my earlier ones that I went to, and I watched it in the cinema. And I remember turning to Lauren, like about 30 minutes into the film, and going, "This is a lot like Romeo and Juliet. Is this a rip-off?"
Public domain, mate. You can't rip off Shakespeare.
Exactly, to where she just whispered, "That's the point." But yeah, no, I'm talking obviously about the Spielberg version because that's the one I saw, and I really loved it. It's again, he's an absolute master. The music is amazing. It's Bernstein, which is of course popular now because of Maestro, which I also watched on Christmas. Yeah,
very musical Christmas.
It has been with Bradley Cooper, but yeah, it's essentially that. Really, it's Romeo and Juliet with songs based in New York, and this is modern New York. I believe is it the 60s when the first,
yeah, the original one was from the 1960s.
Was the 60s, and it's really about, well, the logline is 2 youngsters from rival New York City gangs fall in love, but tensions between their respective friends build towards tragedy. Yeah, there you go.
So another uplifting musical choice there for you guys. But no, I mean, well, that goes to show, and that's a classic musical. Musicals don't have to be about sort of boring, bland subject matter. I think at the time it was very contemporary. It was very edgy. There was a lot of racial tensions and gang tensions, and still is, Yeah. And so they made a musical about it. Why not?
But yeah, no, it's about, like you said, it's about sort of racial tensions as well between Puerto Ricans, who I believe the Sharks, and then you've got the Jets, as well, who are
the Anglo.
Yeah, they're sort of white European American at that time, and yeah, it's about 2 star-crossed lovers. As in Shakespeare, who they find each other in a dance hall, which is just an amazing scene. It's like the first, you got the opening scene, which is sort of classic Spielberg. It comes from really, really high up, and then we sort of explore this. It's almost like a sort of a war, like a battlefield landscape, sort of completely dilapidated buildings, and it's like it's been bombed, and then we come down, and then we've got the 2 rival gangs, and they fight each other. But then you go to this dance hall scene, which again, speaking to someone who does choreography, was completely blown away by it. So it's got everything. It's got Spielberg's amazing direction, the choreography. If you're into dancing, that is amazing as well. It's breathtaking. The acting and the performances are brilliant as well. And it's Rachel Zegler's sort of, that was her sort of standout role. Her first, I think they auditioned. They did one of those sort of nationwide or global auditions, and then they found her. They all threw in self tapes, and this was her.
And she'll be playing Snow White next, so she's obviously on the musical.
Yeah, but the standout for me is Ariana DeBois. She's just getting breathtaking. So yeah, the writing as well. Tony Kushner, he's the screenwriter who works with Spielberg, and the script's brilliant.
Classic songs as well. I mean, I did songs from West Side Story at primary school, so I am tempted to burst out into song right now, but I will keep it under wraps. But yeah, I think I've seen that, and I've seen the original one as well, and I think the original is beautifully shot, amazing cinematography, amazing musical numbers, even the editing I find was really excellent. I think where it's let down is most of the Puerto Rican characters are played by white actors in blackface. Even
Trigger warning you did there. Yeah.
Even the one Puerto Rican in the film was sort of darkened for with makeup for the film. So I think that's something that they rectified in this version by casting real Latinx actors. And so perhaps it is something that is ripe for a remake, in that, now you can cast people who are more authentic.
It's weird that the conversation that it was it was having was really sort of quite liberal and forward thinking. You know, like the whole song "America" really is an amazing song actually when you listen to the lyrics, because it's a complete critique of American society and the struggles of that those communities had at that time. But then obviously, does that completely undermine the original
it's a
film? I
shame
don't know
about the casting. I still think it's a film worth watching, definitely, for many reasons. But the casting choices perhaps let it down.
Well, I'd like to see it. I've never seen either version, to be honest with you, but I will give it a watch.
You should watch
for
that.
Sure. You are listening to the Brum Picture Show on Brum Radio. We've been trying to cheer ourselves up in this cold and dark January by talking about musicals, and now we're going to cheer ourselves up by talking about Society of the Snow, the heartwarming film from J.A. Bayona, of course, director of The Orphanage and The Impossible and the not so great, let's face it, Jurassic World, Fallen Kingdom, and this is based on the very incredibly, unbelievably true story of the 1972 Uruguayan Air Force Flight 571 disaster. Yes, a rugby team and their associates crashed in the Andean mountains and had to survive. So it's an incredible story. Rory, do you want to start by, because you said you texted me the other night going, this is a hard watch. So
This is one of your films you were looking forward to 2024.
Yeah, we mentioned this in the last episode as what we're looking forward to this year. What did you think, Rory?
I don't want this to be the theme of the episode, but this film needs a trigger warning. It's horrific, and in a great way, but at times I was thinking, I don't know if I would be able to get through this, which might be a selfish point of view when you're watching what I was watching.
So I'm intrigued. Were you aware of the original? Were you aware of the event, and were you aware of?
I was aware of the event, and I watched the original. I think I watched the original film.
Yeah, Alive from Alive from 1993, which is of course directed by Frank Marshall, who's the producer of some of the most successful movie franchises of all time, including Indiana Jones and Jurassic Park, and also director of one of my favourite films from the year of my birth, Arachnophobia from 1990.
Oh, I love Arachnophobia.
So yes, it is. This is kind of.
Is there a 60s version of the film as well?
Well, that would be before the actual event, so I'd be impressed if if there was.
Is there a 1973 version of the film?
Yeah, very prophetic. Is there?
Yeah.
Is there? There's definitely an old, not 60s.
They got in there quickly, didn't they? But Alive is definitely the most famous one for sure.
Yeah, I watched that. Yeah.
But yeah, like I guess having knowledge of the event itself and the previous film adaptations at least kind of prepares you for what's going to happen a little bit, but you felt unprepared.
Well, because I didn't think Alive was as, I didn't think it could be as gritty as it was, because Alive was it wasn't as gritty as as Society of the Snow. The air, like the plane crashing thing is just so terrifying, and there's a lot of crunching. There was a lot of crunching, and but also I guess it's a story about hope. I kept thinking, how are they surviving this? This is just insane.
There's so many things in the film and indeed in Alive that you think, well, surely that's just dramatic license, and well, obviously that didn't happen. And then you look into the story, and that all happened. Like, obviously, there's a few little changes here and there, but the basic sequence of really unfortunate events, that's all real. Like, it is astonishing what those people went through, and I just don't know how. I honestly don't know how they managed to do it. And it is one of those films where you kind of you stop watching it as a film in some ways, and you just think what you would do in that situation. And
I would not survive. I'm a vegetarian, so that's doubly.
Right. Well, I'd say in that context,
that's doubly
I don't think you'd have a choice, Nadine.
Exactly. What? Yeah,
which is the whole point of the film. Part of the film was that moral conundrum.
Yeah. In fact, I think this story would go quite differently today, because I'm obviously watching it from my perspective. And for a film called Society of the Snow, I didn't think there was very much about the interpersonal politics in between. There's not actually that much of a power struggle in them, and I guess a lot of that comes from the fact that they are already in an existing rugby team, so they've already got kind of a power structure already in place. And they've already got everyone on the plane, with the exception of a few people. They kind of know each other, or at least know each other by degrees of separation. So
they also all go to the same church.
Yeah. So in that sense, I suppose it does make sense that there isn't actually that much interpersonal conflict. Because if I'd been trapped in that plane with a bunch of strangers, the moral and philosophical conundrum of whether or not to eat someone else in that fuselage would not be an issue for me. By the second night, I'd be chowing down on the pilot's leg, I think.
Oh my gosh! I do not want to.
You wouldn't even know the entire situation.
Yeah.
There'd be a village 5 miles down the road.
I wouldn't even wait for the nuts to run out. I'd just be
Goodness!
There we go.
I'm not going on holiday with you now, Paul.
No. But I genuinely think it's just incredible. And obviously this story, it has been told by the survivors, so perhaps things weren't as harmonious on that. But I do think it does seem that for the most part, that is how things went down.
They call their leader. I like they call the leader captain and stuff that. I just thought it was really interesting.
And I just think if you took that exact same story, because remember this is 1972, so this is 50 years ago. But if you imagine that same event happening today with a plane full of strangers, I think the outcome would be very different indeed. But yeah, I just wouldn't have been able to cope. Either I would have just been going mad, or I'd be like that depressed penguin in Werner Herzog Encounters at the End of the World, when that penguin just walks off into the distance and is like. But yeah, so it wouldn't be like I'd just leave, and not in a heroic Captain Oates way. Just more like that penguin. It's just like, I'm off, mate. I'm not dealing with being stuck in this plane with like 15 other people. Because, whilst this is gritty stuff, I do think it is still quite Hollywood. It does shy away from. It doesn't go too deep with just the grim reality, and I don't think it could.
I disagree with that.
It could.
I thought it was as gritty as it needed to be.
Yes, no, I agree. I don't think it could have gone grittier, because it would have been unwatchable, and ultimately the story is one about human triumph, and if you actually were to get even more realistic with it, then I think it would just be unwatchable and just kind of negate the message of the film, because it's about it's about perseverance and all that, and it's
difficult. One thing I've not necessarily struggled with, but I didn't think we needed the narration, because it does the thing of where it explains something that we all know because we're just watching it. And that was one of my issues with that.
I mean, and it's something that makes it again a little bit too similar to the 1993 version, because that's narrated by. It's got narration from like an older John Malkovich, just talking about the whole experience of it all. And I did think that was a bit of an issue. And also, it's more the fact that Alive does exist, and I don't think it did too much more with the story than that original adaptation did. I like that it was more authentic, and that it's obviously actually in the Spanish language, and so I think, and it's obviously got the benefit of 30 years of filmmaking progress. But I think I wouldn't have minded seeing maybe a different version that's more about kind of the aftermath about when they got back. Like, you still focus on the disaster itself, but of course one of the most interesting parts of the story is about how they kind of had to explain themselves when they got back. And it was like,
how'd you go back to normal society?
And also because I was talking about Alfred Packer earlier, how he had to explain what he'd done to survive. And at first, like, the survivors did claim they were living off packed food, and then eventually they just kind of admitted, and then the whole kind of backlash around that, I think that would have been an interesting different angle.
I believe the Pope exonerated them.
Right. Yes. They certainly were forgiven. Definitely.
Yeah,
and I think it's fair enough. Like, because that's the thing. So much of the film is about that ethical debate, and for me, it's not a debate. You just like they did what they had to do to survive, and there's.
I think it's about the ethical debate, but the ethical debate in the context of Catholicism as well.
Yeah.
And that religious contect.
Exactly, because that's the thing. I'm not watching that from a religious perspective. So obviously, to them, being a mostly Roman Catholic, bunch of passengers, that moral conundrum would be far more of a weighty one. But yeah, as I say, for me, I'd just be like, no, it's all right. I wish we could speak more about this film, but I thought it was incredibly well done and really effective. But yeah, be prepared for it. And whilst it doesn't add that much more than the 1993 version does, like it's just really well done. So yeah, give that a watch. Nadine, have you seen anything recently you'd like to talk about?
Yeah, I've been catching up on some films that I missed out on in 2023. So I watched Scrapper, I watched Across the Spider-Verse, which is on Now TV, I watched Barbarian on Prime, and I watched How to Have Sex, which has been getting a lot of positive sort of critical responses to that as well. I have to say, watching Barbarian probably wasn't the best choice right before bedtime, because that's a sort of scary movie if you're not aware. And at about 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, I heard a terrific crash bang wallop in my house. Spent about 5 minutes trying to find my phone so I could use the torch to investigate. Now, I do have a cat, so it's not unusual to hear noises in the middle of the night. But I did get worried when I stepped into the hallway and I heard the kitchen door close.
Ooh.
And if you've seen Barbarian, you can understand where my head was at. And I obviously I made sure I had a weapon on me, but I don't know what I was prepared. I was not prepared for what I saw on the other side of the door. When I did open the door, because the door's usually propped open with a chair so my cat can get in and out, I found my cat on the countertop with half a paper bag wrapped around his head. He'd gotten into basically the recycling bag, must have panicked, got trapped, got stuck in it, freaked out, ran into the chair that was propping the kitchen door open and moved it and sort of trapped himself in the kitchen with the paper bag handle around his neck, which has nothing to do with Barbarian other than the fact that it is a very scary film that involves sort of people in your house or in the place that you're staying that you're not aware of. And it's set in Detroit, which seems to be the perfect place to set horror films these days. I have to say, Justin Long, I'm a huge fan of his. He brought a kind of comic element halfway into the film. It deals with some serious subject matter as well. In the way that people often talk about elevated horror these days, I think this is just a classic horror movie that happens to be addressing a very current topic, like many horror films have done since the beginning of horror films. So, I would recommend it, but I wouldn't recommend watching it late at night when you've got a crazed cat sort of wandering around your house.
Just briefly, I want to mention that I went to see Ferrari, which is, of course, the new Michael Mann film. I guess it's been a little while since he's made a film, so that's a big event. I suppose, in many ways, it's another addition to the corporate drama genre. It's a nice musical rhyme there, isn't it? The corporate drama genre. Anyway,
we can't shut him up now. We should never made him do karaoke.
I know.
I have heard you sing 4 times now since then.
And you missed the intro.
I've never heard you before.
It is the musical episode.
He does have a good voice.
But yeah, so this has more in common with House of Gucci, I suppose, than something like Blackberry.
I might watch it then.
Yeah, but it is a really solid film. Undoubtedly, you'll get more out of the film if you know your racing history,
which I don't,
or maybe less. Perhaps there's loads of historical inaccuracies that would enrage you if you knew about racing. But nevertheless, this kept me very engaged and interested for a film that's about a subject for which I care little. If it was up to me, there'd be no cars. And unlike Napoleon, this very wisely focuses on a very select period of Ferrari's life and doesn't get to encompass too much. Whilst there's still a lot of talk of contract negotiations and business wheeling and dealing, get it? It's about cars. Cars have wheels.
Yeah.
And the main race in it is indeed a spectacle. This is still very much focused on the human drama. So again, not worlds apart from Napoleon, in that a lot of this is about his relationship with women and the importance of keeping his family name and bloodline going. And these moments are really well played out. There's a remarkable performance from Penelope Cruz, and Adam Driver is, of course, great as always. And is he a movie star or just a really good actor? That's probably a debate for another time, but
Yeah, I think we
Yeah.
need to do an episode on movie
Yeah, we
stars,
do.
perhaps.
I definitely recommend it as a film. There's some very funny moments, although perhaps some not intentionally. There's a moment where there's a new driver turns up asking to drive for Ferrari, and then he refuses. And then the old driver immediately crashes and dies right in front of them at that moment. And that was a bit of dramatic license that definitely got a laugh in the screening that I was in. And it seemed like maybe, I don't know, maybe that's a little bit flippant because this is a true, that actually happened. And just it works as a kind of funny moment because this guy immediately crashes, dies, and then
That's lucky.
Yeah, and then Ferrari's like, well, I'll see you in my office on Monday, and then that's it. A very good film. But yeah, maybe you'll get more out of it if you like cars and stuff. And now it's over to Nadine for her roundup of local events. What's happening in the area, Nadine?
Well, I'm going to mix it up a bit this week because, January, not as much going on. So we're going to get some general releases in there. So all you multiplex fans, we've got something for you as well. And with us gearing up for award season, a lot of those big awardsy films that we've been hearing about from Cannes and from, America, the Golden Globes and all that kind of thing, they're finally making their way over to our shores. So if you've been looking forward to Poor Things by Yorgos Lanthimos, that'll be out on the 12th of January on general release. The Holdovers, another awards favourite, will be being released on the 19th of January on general release. On the 26th of January, we've got All of Us Strangers on general release and a lot of buzz about that. And for all you musical fans, The Colour Purple, the musical, will be being released on the 26th of January on general release. So that's an all-new star-studded version of that film, which was adapted from a book. Now, for our local community cinema events, on the 18th of January, Screen B14, big news, it's our 5th birthday, and we're going to be holding our birthday bash at the Cuban Embassy on the 18th of January, and we'll be showing a collection of locally made short films. But we've sold out currently. We may release some more tickets, so keep an eye out for that. But, you snooze, you lose on this one. On the 24th of January, the Classic Film Club at St Anne's Club Digbeth will be showing Shutter Island, a favourite of mine, a bit of a Martin Scorsese classic. And on the 27th of January, we'll be showing an extra special screening of The Red Shoes by Powell and Pressburger at Moseley Dance Centre. And that is a collaboration with the BFI for their Cinema Unbound season. And on the 31st of January, the Classic Film Club will be showing Jaws at St Anne's Club in Digbeth. Lots of great films coming out, lots of great films already been released. I'm looking forward to going and seeing Priscilla soon by Sofia Coppola. That will be making its way to the multiplexes soon, so very excited for that one as well.
Will it though? Isn't it already out? And
yeah, this was something I was worried about because I've been waiting. It was supposed to be released January 1st, and you can actually see if you go to the Mockingbird, I believe they're showing it, so some of the independents are showing it.
Right.
But I think it's doing that thing of like kind of staggered release. So it will be showing at the multiplexes soon.
Okay,
if
good.
it isn't already near you.
I would like to make use of my subscription to a certain local multiplex.
Yes, I was having the same issue. I was like, where's it gone? It's not there anymore, but it is coming out. It's coming out soon.
That's good. That's good. Well, thanks, Nadine. That was a lovely and thorough roundup of what's going on. So that's about all we've got time for the Brum Picture Show this week. Join us next week. But in the meantime, it's goodbye from me, Paul.
It's goodbye from me, Nadine.
And goodbye from me, Rory.
Thanks for listening.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
You have been listening to The Brum Picture Show, a Screen B14 production for Brum Radio. Tune in next time for more film fun, and don't forget to email us at pictureshow@brumradio.com. Thanks for listening. Goodbye.
I'll do you first.
What, so you
Oh, God, I don't give you permission to eat my corpse.
Oh, I'd give you
I'm
permission to eat my
Oh, I know you would.
The greatest love, or whatever that quote was.
Yeah.
No, I don't love anybody enough to let them eat me.
Rory, you can eat me too.
I'm sure my cat will probably end up eating me.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, my cat would eat me in a second.
Cat tries to eat me now.
It wouldn't even wait
Yeah.
for me to be dead.
Exactly.
Thank you for listening to this Brum Radio podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and rate us on your podcast app.